Emotional life does not announce itself clearly. It tends to stay unlabeled for a long time, not because it is absent, but because the language around it is often either too limited or too performative to feel usable. So it gets rooted elsewhere, into reading, into thinking, into private observation, sometimes into silence that is not empty, just unspoken. Bibliotherapy in this context is not something new being introduced. It is something already happening being named more accurately. A lot of people assume that reading as an emotional practice is something abstract or aesthetic. But if you look closely, it is often extremely practical. People read when they cannot articulate something directly. They reread when something is unresolved internally. They underline sentences when a thought finally appears in a form that feels stable enough to keep. None of this requires a framework, it just happens. For many men, this relationship with books exists without being explicitly acknowledged. Not because emotional engagement is absent, but because the cultural vocabulary around emotional articulation is often either overdefined or undersupported. So instead of speaking about what is happening internally, there is often a shift into indirect forms. Reading, writing things down without necessarily framing them as writing, returning to the same text repeatedly during certain periods of life, not for analysis, just for proximity. This is where bibliotherapy becomes useful as a concept, not as instruction, but as recognition of what is already in practice, because the idea that reading is only intellectual is incomplete, and the idea that emotional processing has to be verbalized in a specific way is also incomplete. A lot of emotional work happens in a quieter format. Books are one of them. There is a reason certain texts get revisited during specific phases of life. It is not always about understanding the plot differently. It is often about finding stability in the tone of another mind that feels coherent enough to stay with. There's also something about pacing here that matters. Books allow for internal states that are not immediately resolved. They do not require instant articulation. You can stay in a thought without needing to finalize it. That alone is not minor, because a lot of modern communication systems reward immediate conclusion, a position, a summary, or takeaway. Reading resists that slightly. It allows for extended internal processing without external output. That is one of its quieter functions, not dramatic insight, just sustained attention. There's also a tendency in public conversation to treat emotional literacy as something that needs to be added to certain groups, as if it is absent until introduced. But in practice, most people already have forms of emotional processing. They are just not always named in the same language. A man reading a novel and stopping at a paragraph for 10 minutes is not doing something different from someone journaling about their thoughts. The medium is different, the function is often similar. Bibliotherapy is useful here only insofar as it removes the assumption that emotional engagement must look a particular way in order to count. It does not ask for disclosure, it does not require framing, it simply observes that reading already functions as a way of staying close to internal experience without needing to convert it into speech immediately. There's also another misconception that reading as emotional engagement is inherently soft or passive. It's not. Sometimes it is the only space where complexity is not reduced too quickly, where contradictory thoughts can sit next to each other without being forced into resolution, where ambiguity is not treated as something to fix immediately. That is not avoidance, that is structure. One of the reasons literature remains relevant is precisely because it can hold states that everyday communication cannot. Not because it is superior, but because it is slower, more patient with unfinished thought. And that matters more than people tend to admit, especially in contexts where emotional expression is often expected to be either fully articulated or not expressed at all. Books offer something in between, a place where internal experience can exist without immediate explanation. Expressive writing is one of my favorite ways to explain feelings and yet not explain them. If you think you want to try it, there's a beginner-friendly 30-day prompt workbook which you receive when you join my Patreon. It is a very short book with questions that will make you think and write. You can download it easily by clicking on the link to my Patreon in the description box below.